Hi, this is Jacob Erdy with MarketingPlayBook.co, where we help small businesses increase their sales and reputation online through digital marketing. And for anyone who might be a little late attending this week's hangout, we do live hangouts every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's now 2:16 p.m. I apologize there. The last stream we set up, I bumped the resolution, and in my testing, the video resolution worked at the 1080p. But when I went to go live, it didn't work. And once you set up a live feed, you can't adjust the resolution for whatever reason. So I had to bump it back down to 720p. Kind of just some technical issues. So I just sent out here about 5 minutes ago a new tweet, and on the Facebook page and on the private Facebook group. So if you haven't signed up to any of those, that's how you know about any of the new hangouts that we do, as well as our newsletter. We'll tell you, hey, the new hangouts, but we use the social media channels kind of whenever we have something to say or discuss. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Pretty good show for you today. And I wanted to choose a lighter topic, and then I started writing about it. And the topic is everything I know about keywords for AdWords search. And I chose this. My daughter, I have a daughter now. She was just born this Saturday here, so just a few days ago. And I wanted something really, really easy to write about. That way I could just quickly jam something out. And then it ended up being, when it comes to keywords, there's a lot of information out there for it, so it's not really a light topic. So I'm going to kind of do a quick overview of a lot of things I notice small businesses in particular are doing wrong with keywords, and just throwing out some suggestions for you. So this should really help, and we'll go ahead and get started here. Now, if you would like to, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and you're going to see it there at the bottom. I think it's right about there. At the bottom of the screen, you're going to see MKTG Playbook, and so just go ahead and head over to Twitter and put that in, and I should be able to get the live tweet, and with the live tweets, I can answer any questions on air, which will be really nice for you. So on to the guide. Oh yes, the show notes page. So if you wanted to view the notes for this episode, go to MarketingPlayBook.co/episode and then the number 12. We are now on episode 12, so been doing this for 3 months now. Yay, right? So 3 months straight. Let's see if we can't keep going. So, like I said, I chose this topic because it's a relatively easy one for me to write about, just because, anybody who's doing PPC for a dozen years realizes that keywords are the base of every campaign. So it's really the starting point for any campaign out there. And if you end up nailing this and getting it right, and then chances are you'll probably be pretty good, even if you mess up some other settings. Keywords are definitely that important for you. So, like I said, you can follow along on MarketingPlayBook.co/episode, the number 12, if you wanted to follow the written guide. And I'm going to switch screens here in a minute and kind of cover some live examples for you inside AdWords. So, first off here, keywords, the foundations of all campaigns on search. And I kind of already talked about that, and something that I run into fairly consistently, especially with males in particular who have been in their industry for 20 plus years. They assume that they know what the customer is searching for. They say, hey, I know my customers. I know exactly what they're searching for. And they've already had a lot of success. They've been in business for 20 years and they're established. But when it comes to people doing searches, you never really know what keywords are going to work for you and what keywords are not. And there's many different factors involved here, especially depending upon your location. So a good example of this might be transmission and transmission repair. So some individuals will be able to bid on the keyword just transmission, and they could even bid on it broad or broad match modified, which we'll get to in a second. And they can be profitable. And they can be profitable because maybe in that area, there's not as much competition. So in their particular city, might not be a whole lot of people bidding on that keyword transmission. But if you were to go down to, let's say, St. Paul or Denver or some highly populated area, chances are there's going to be a lot of individuals bidding on that type of keyword. So the cost might be too high, and your conversion rate for that keyword might end up being a little bit too low. So that might not end up working for you. And the keyword that might be best for you would be transmission repair. It's clearly has a more user intent in there, transmission and repair, but you don't really know until you actually test out those keywords. So my point here is you're going to have to really load up a lot of keywords and then kind of start weeding them out based upon user intent. And I'll go over more of that when we talk about keyword grouping. And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen real quick with you just so you can see what's going on. And right before I do that here, we have MarketingPlayBook.co/connect. That's how you can join. You can go to the MarketingPlayBook.co website. You'll see the newsletter on the right-hand side. When you join our newsletter, you're going to be able to get access to our live weekly hangouts and any other articles that we write. We put out some pretty good stuff, so definitely you'll want to check that out. But we also have a Facebook group as well as a Facebook page, a private Facebook group, a Google Hangout group, and the like. So definitely check out that page. It's going to be MarketingPlayBook.co/connect. And that way you can connect with us and other small business owners, and kind of there you can ask your live questions in the private Facebook group, which is currently still free. So I don't know when we'll close that down. Eventually we're going to start charging for it, but anybody who joins now isn't going to be charged. So let's go ahead and let's switch screens. And if you're just listening, that's fine. I'm going to kind of explain this anyways in pretty good detail, so you'll be just fine. But if you want, we're going to have the live recording on the episode notes page as well as the episode notes. So definitely go and check that out. So the other thing I want to talk about is keyword grouping, and this can take a while to actually nail down and get down correctly. So oftentimes what I'll see inside business accounts is something along this. They're going to have an ad group called brakes and then an ad group called oil change. Clearly I'm still on the auto mechanic things, which I've been on for the last few weeks just because we're focused on the service-based industry, and this works pretty well. So for the brakes, some of the keywords we have in there is brake repair, brake service, car brakes, pad replacement. For oil change coupons, oil change near me, express oil change, synthetic oil change, quick oil change, cheap oil change, things along those lines. Now, most companies are going to say, well, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just create one ad group called brakes and put all these brake keywords in there. And then I'm going to create another ad group called oil change and put all the oil change in there. And then I'm going to have the ad inside there go to the brakes page and the ad inside the oil change ad group to the oil change page. And that theoretically isn't bad. I mean, that's a nice quick way of doing it. But you have to remember here with the keywords, you want to have that ad copy as closely and as relevant as possible for the user, because if somebody does a search for brake pad replacement and you have brake pad replacement in the title as well as in the description, and then you go to your brakes landing page, you're going to be far better off. You're going to have a lot more. You're going to have a higher click-through rate. People are going to click on your ad because it says because it says brake pad replacement in there. And just using that type of strategy, you're going to be far better. So if you actually, even if you create, let's say, a new campaign around it, technically I'd probably throw all the ad groups inside one campaign just so I can keep track of conversions a little bit easier and optimize a little bit easier there. But if you break each and every keyword down to its own ad group and then write a specific ad for that keyword, you're going to be speaking far more to the user, and you're also going to be speaking more to the end user as well. So Google the machine as well as the human who's actually doing the search. So for that, what I'd kind of do is I'd break it down more like this. So you have your ad group, and I kind of just said this. Brake repair and keyword would be brake repair in there. Brake service, brake service. Car brakes is the ad group name, and the keyword would be car brakes. That way you can just speak more to the exact keyword that's being bid on. This is going to take a lot more time to build out the campaigns, which is why oftentimes I'll recommend tools. So I myself use like Speed PPC. Now, yes, it costs like $150 a month or something like that, but as somebody who builds a lot of campaigns, it definitely saves me time, and there's nothing wrong with signing up for the service, building your campaign, and then canceling the service, because it is built more for agencies. So that's a nice way of quickly building out all these ad groups with all the keywords in there, and then taking those ad groups, importing them to AdWords Editor, and then manually changing each and every ad copy out, or using dynamic keyword insertion, which we kind of covered in a previous Hangout here. So definitely check that out. So we have quite a bit of Hangouts covering AdWords, so that'll be a pretty good one to check out. So the keyword match types. And this comes up. So when you have your break service ad group and then you have your break service keyword, there's 4 different match types that you can use with the break service. And they're going to be exact, broad, broad match modified, and phrase. So I'll cover each and every one of these. And the 2 I generally always use starting out is going to be exact and then the BMM. BMM is broad match modified. So I use both of those because they kind of cross the gambit of the keyword structure, and they're going to be higher. They're going to be highly focused. If you were just to use, let's say, broad keywords, you might find that you're going to, for let's say a brake pad replacement, you might just start in that was broad. Well, somebody who does, let's say, pad replacement for iPhone or something like that, your keyword can technically show, because it's going to say, well, this says brake pad replacement, maybe it means this, and this. Well, if you bid on exact, which is going to be in those it's going to be wrapped in the brackets that we show here. So if it's wrapped in those square brackets, that's going to be exact. And your ad's going to show only when that exact keyword is shown, or a very closely relevant keyword to that. So it could be singular or plural. Child clothes could be child clothing, and very, very similar type keywords. So they're going to be very, very closely matched with the user intent on it, which is really, really nice. So with the broad match modified, it's going to be similar to broad bidding. However, you're telling Google that the search should contain these keywords, or very, very similar to these keywords. So if you were to do break service, it'd be plus break plus service. So if somebody were to type in St. Paul brake service, your ad would show because it has break and service in it. And it could be something like service St. Paul car brakes. Your ad would still show because, again, it has the plus break and the plus service in there. So that's a really, really good way of kind of honing in on your initial group. And then if you combine that with a few negative keywords off the bat, you can usually do pretty good. And so that's why I use the exact and BMM. And so the other 2 match types that I don't necessarily use off the bat is going to be phrase. And the reason why I don't use phrase anymore is because the exact keyword kind of already covers it. So if I did car brakes, even exactly car brakes, brakes car, the reverse will still show because the user intent's there. So they kind of changed how the exact match works a year or so ago, which kind of enabled a phrase to almost become extinct. You'll still see it in some campaigns, and I'll still add it in, especially if there's a high enough volume in a specific area. I'll add it in. Or even on e-commerce, I'll try it just to try it. But overall, the exact keyword's going to pretty much do it for you, so you don't really have to worry about that. So most people aren't really going to have to use the phrase ones in there. When it comes to the broad keywords, I covered that a little bit already. So if somebody were to make a search for car brakes, really, even if they type in bike brakes, your ad could technically show. So they just kind of, there's no modifier. So it's just the keyword itself. And without that modifier, it's going to be broad, and really it can bring in all kinds of pretty crazy results. AdWords is a lot better than Bing, however. With Bing, I mean, if I were to type, do TV repair, somebody who does Amazon TV, my ad could technically show. So Bing's a lot dumber, and so you might have to tighten it a little bit more. When it comes to broad, have a lot more negative keywords in there. But on AdWords, you're pretty good using the broad match modified, and then you're just going to be modifying and looking at the exact search terms to see what comes up. So this kind of brings up when to use broad keywords. And let me go over to Twitter, make sure we don't have any questions just yet. And I believe we should be good. I'll refresh the page. Yep, we are good. So when to use broad keywords, and I'll use them at different times, and really it's a matter of filling out the campaign. If you have no volume at all, then you might want to go broad and maybe even bid a little bit higher. If you're doing exact and BMM, you might want to bid higher just to see if there is more volume out there for you if you're not hitting that number 1 or number 2 position. But broad is a great way of discovering keywords. So after you use BMM and you kind of figure out a few of those negative keywords to add to your campaign so you don't show for certain phrases, which I'll talk more in just a second, then using broad is good because you'll be able to get more relevant keywords that you can re-add into your ad group that people are actually searching for. So without it, you can discover things that you wouldn't have imagined people actually searching for. So, and they can actually have some pretty high volume too. So I will almost always start to include some broad keywords at some point in time over the life or course of a campaign, especially once we get profitable and we want to kind of ramp up a little bit more and discover more keywords. And if BMM isn't doing that for you, then just doing broad is a great way of flushing out more keywords. But starting it off the bat oftentimes can make it a bit harder because it's going to drop your click-through rate because your ad copy is not going to be quite as relevant. So you'll generally get a lower CTR, which isn't what you want. You want that high click-through rate, because with that high click-through rate increases your quality score. With the increased quality score, it drops your CPC down. So I don't usually start with broad, but I'll start doing and adding broad in over the course of time, especially when I want to expand my campaign. If it's not getting any volume, or if I'm unprofitable and I want more sales, then I'll do it. So now we're going to kind of jump into negative keywords. And negative keywords play an extremely important part here in your campaign. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to AdWords. This just kind of show you what this will look like. So inside your ad group, and this is just an example one I just created, so I don't have any data in here to share with you, but I can still go over it. So we have inside the campaign itself, I'm inside my ad group, and just pretend this is brake repair, right? Well, here is another tab, and this is search terms. Before, this was hidden under the dimensions tabs, but they broke it out to be a lot easier to see, which thank you AdWords for doing that. They just did that a few months ago just because it's so much easier and now people are actually aware of it. So the search terms are going to be the exact search terms that people are searching for. So if I did let's say a broad match modified of brake repair, I can see that somebody was going to type in caravan brake repair, Ford brake repair, White Bear Lake brake repair, St. Paul brake repair, Denver brake repair. I can see the exact search term that somebody's typing in. And then I can also see the match type. Is it broad? Is it exact? Is it phrase? And then whether it's been added or excluded. So you'll see added if that keyword has already been added to an ad group, and it'll be excluded if you have excluded that keyword. So somebody, if you did brake repair, well then, and you're a mechanic, you probably don't want to rank for bicycle brake repair, right? So if you see it here, the term bicycle brake repair, and then you see it's been excluded, then you know that, okay, I've already added that to my negative keyword list, which we'll get to in a second. So here you have the number of clicks, your impressions, your click-through rate, and it starts to cut off over here. We have our conversion rate, cost per conversion, and your average cost, CPC, your average cost per click. So these are all great, but they're missing something here, and that is the actual keyword that triggered the ad. So what I would do is I'd go under columns, I go to modify, and then under attributes here, I'm going to go ahead and add in the keyword, and then I'm going to scroll down, I'm going to take this keyword, and I'm going to drop it all the way up here. So I'm going to move it all the way up to the column, I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And what's going to happen here is you're going to see not only the search term, but now you're going to see the keyword that actually triggered that ad. So that actually triggered that search term. So if I did, plus brake plus repair, and over here it's St. Paul brake repair, I can see that, okay, this keyword triggered that ad. And that's important because you're going to be able to associate more with, okay, this keyword is triggering these kind of results. And you might be able to find out sometimes that, oh wow, this one keyword is just draining my budget and it's bringing up all kinds of irrelevant results. which might not be what you want. So once you have your actual keywords, you can go and just copy these into an Excel notepad or anything like that, or Word, and then you can go under negative keywords. And under negative keywords, you have two different associations here. You can do it at the ad group level, which we're currently in the ad group, or you can do it at the campaign level. And generally, for the most part, I tend to add in most of my negatives on the campaign level. And doing so seems to work fairly well for me, going that route. And so at the campaign level, it's going to associate it with all the ad groups inside that campaign, which is really what you want, especially for keywords that might not be relevant for you. So you have two different match types that you can use on the campaign level, and that is going to be exact and broad. And when you're doing exact keywords, it works a little bit different on the negative keyword one. So if you were going to do, let's say, bicycle brake repair, and you wanted to remove that, well, you could technically just add in bicycle, just bicycle by itself, no modifier at all, and that's going to be broad. So I'd go ahead and I'd click the plus sign symbol, and I type in bicycle, if I can spell it right. So I have bicycle here, and that's going to be the broad keyword. But let's say it wasn't bicycle. Let's say it was just an exact keyword that wasn't making you money. Transmission would be a really good one. So let's say you're bidding broad on transmission, and transmission repair is getting you a lot of stuff, but not transmission, right? So you want to put in transmission as a broad keyword, because then if you did any search that has the keyword in there of transmission, your ad isn't going to show anymore, but yet you still want to show because transmission repair and things like that. So there, what you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to use the exact brackets. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the bracket there, and transmission. So what this is saying is if, oh, I spelled that wrong. I think it's two S's there, transmission, or it's two M's. Oh, nope, two S's. We're good. So transmission. So when somebody just searches for transmission and only transmission, that's it, then it's going to exclude it from the keyword list. So if for whatever reason somebody was doing the plural as well, then you're going to have to add that in. So it's not, on the exact, when you're bidding on exact, not negatives, but when you're bidding on exact keywords, it can trigger, child's clothes, child clothing, children's clothes, things like that. That exact keyword can trigger all those different keywords. But when it comes to negative keywords, it doesn't work like that. It's exact. So if I wanted to do the plural, I'd have to put it in again on a new line and actually add in the S. So transmissions. And by doing that, you're now going to eliminate that exact search. And so that's how it works on the negative keywords then. So it's a little bit different, but at the same time, it's fairly similar. So let's go ahead and move on. So I covered the search terms. I covered adding in the keyword attribute to the column. That way you can see what keyword actually triggered the ad, which is really, really good. And then we talked about the where to place the negative keywords in the negative keyword tab, and the different levels of keywords. So you do have phrase. Sorry, you have phrase as well that you can do for the negative keyword matches. But usually you're going to be using exact and broad for the most part in a lot of those. So moving on, I talked about the difference between adding in the exact transmission and the plural and the singular. So we're pretty good there. And I see many accounts negative out keywords early on without any testing being done. So this is just going to be a quick tip when it comes to negative keywords. And it's something that I see a lot of businesses do off the bat that I wouldn't recommend. And so they might negative out the keyword free or cheap and things along those lines. So cheap transmission repair, free transmission repair. Of course, there's nothing free in that. So you might be like, well, no, that's just dumb. I don't want those type of searches being done. but they oftentimes can be fairly profitable. So before adding in a huge list of negative keywords, think about it for a second and say, is it possible that a sale could come from it? Now, obviously, you don't service bicycles, so you'd probably want to add bicycles in there just because that search has nothing to do with your services that you provide. But if it does have something to do with the services you provide, even if you don't like the word cheap or affordable or something else in there, I recommend still having those keywords and testing them out. So the next up is how much money should I spend on each keyword before I pause it? And this can be a bit complicated, and really you're going to need to know multiple things. One, you're going to have some sort of tracking set up. So you're going to have some sort of conversion metric, which we'll probably talk about in the future here in a hangout of setting up different types of conversions, which can be time on page and things along those lines, or calls to you using Google forwarding call number, which is fantastic. And things along those lines. So you need some sort of conversion trip in there, a thank you page, going to a second page, navigating to the second page, some sort of qualifier, so you can count the keywords that are bringing in leads to you or have a possibility of bringing in leads. And phone calls is a great way of doing this. But when it comes to spending on that keyword, you're going to need to know the lifetime value of your customer, and then how far out you can go before you can get that reimbursement. So if your lifetime value per customer is $1,000 and you can recoup that, let's say the $100 in the first 6 months, if you have that 6 month cushion built up in there already, then you'll probably be good to have a CPA goal of $100, and that's cost per acquisition. However, you might not be able to track things that granular, and in some businesses you can, in other ones you can't. So if you need to, then you can say, okay, if I can recoup and spend $100 per customer and fan that out over 6 months, if you're fine with that, then you're going to need to know something like your cost per lead. So if you have, let's say for every 5 calls you get 1 sale that comes in, then that's a 20% close rate. So if you have a 20% close rate and you can spend up to $100 per CPA offer, that means that you have a $20 limit. So you have a $20 limit per lead that you can pay. So CPL, cost per lead. So if you can pay $20 per lead, then you know that, all right, that's kind of my upper limit. So what I generally do with that, knowing those numbers and knowing what you can afford, what your CPA goal is or your CPL goal is, based upon that, I usually times that by 1.5. So if it was a $20 CPL goal or CPA goal, then you times that by 1.5, which means $30. So spend $30 on that keyword before you pause it. And that's going to give it the best chance of the possibility of actually making the sale for you, because not all of them are going to convert right away for you. Some will, you might spend $20 and there's no conversions, but that last $10 that you spend for those last 3 or 4 clicks, you might get 2 conversions out of it, right? So, I usually recommend the 1.5x on the offer, which is your goal, right? The CPA goal or CPL goal. And something else to keep in mind there is when you're using broad or broad match modify, you're going to have some irrelevant results early on. And when you have those irrelevant results early on, you're really going to need to focus and say, okay, maybe for the first 2 weeks, I don't even count the ad spend against the keyword. So for the first 2 weeks, as you're adding in a lot of negative keywords, especially if you're having a lot of negative keywords coming in that you're adding to it, then that spend really isn't relevant, because that keyword is triggering all sorts of irrelevant results. But once you're able to eliminate those irrelevant results, you're going to actually get far better results. And now that's your true spend going forward. So you might have to spend a little more than that 1.5x initially. And that's just something to keep in mind as you keep going. So next up, we're going to have, let's see here. What should my starting bid be? Oh, this is a good one. So, what AdWords suggests your starting bid to be can be way off at times, and other times it can be really, really spot on. What I tend to do is limit the budget. So I'll have my budget set up, and whatever that daily budget is, if it's $10, $20, $30, or $100, I'll start it off, and I have my daily budget set, so I can't go over that amount. And then I'll try to generally overbid by like 20% of what Google suggests I should bid. And by doing that, you're going to be able to get pretty accurate information and be in that number one, number two spot. And depending upon that, you can start walking it down. And by being in that number one and number two spot early on, what you're going to do is you're going to get that higher click-through rate. The first ad that shows up is going to get a higher click-through rate. And if you're able to get an above average click-through rate for that number one spot by following and breaking down the keywords like I told you to do, and then chances are you're going to be well above what the average industry is for the click-through rate. And that's going to assign you a higher quality score because Google's going to see it as more relevant. And then your CPC is naturally your cost per click is naturally going to start to drop week over week. And so usually it starts kicking in about 2 weeks or so. So as you start to get that higher quality score, you're going to be able to kind of pull back on those bids, or automatically you might notice that bids are going down and dropping. So I like to be in I like to overbid starting off and then just slowly pull back. And it can be painful. It really can, especially, if your keywords are triggering a lot of bad negatives, a lot of keywords that are irrelevant, like bicycle and things like that. It's a bit of a pain to go through, but you got to go through that pain initially to kind of work out what's going to work for you. And you'll find a few keywords that are really, really good for you, and you can always break those out into its own campaign too as well. There's nothing wrong with that. So a few more tips on using keywords. So you can use the free tool like AdWordsWrapper.com that auto-wraps the keywords into exact phrase, broad, match, modified, broad keywords automatically, and this can be a nice little time saver. So here I went ahead, and these are the keywords. Let me back up. I'll back up one page just to show you the home page. So I'm here on the home page. I scroll down. I just added in my keywords. I say wrap keywords. And here, if I scroll down, it's going to have broad match, modified, phrase, exact match. So they're all already going to be set up for me right here. And then they're going to have the other windows too. So broad match, modified, phrase, exact, broad, phrase, exact. Going to have a mix match, and you can choose which ones you want to use out of that. And so that's a nice little easy tool to just quickly wrap your keywords, and then you can break them down by the ad groups and everything. I myself, like I mentioned, I use Speed PPC. In last week's Hangout, we already talked about some other tools that you can use as well that are relatively inexpensive. Speed PPC does cost about $150 a month or something along those lines. Maybe it's $99 now. I don't know. I don't even remember. But it's always something you can use to start off your campaign, and then just add it in at a later date. Cancel it at a later date. So after a month, you should have had all your campaigns built out, all your ad groups built out, and then you really don't need the service anymore. Once it's built out initially, you can just kind of modify what you already have. So you can just cancel the service. It's more built for agencies, but it's a really, really good tool to use. Some other tips out there, I already mentioned that I use Speed PPC. Then for keyword research, you have Bing Ads, our Bing Keywords tool, which is great. You have the AdWords Keywords tool, that's great. You can also outsource this too as well. So if you have no idea and like, man, I'm just too busy, and I understand a lot of businesses out there are just too busy. They're like, I'm already doing my regular stuff. I don't have time to do this. You can outsource it. There's plenty of people on Fiverr, for example, that are pretty cheap to do. And I don't know if you've ever used Fiverr. I've talked about it in our outsourcing hangout that we did when I talked about outsourcing, and Fiverr can be fantastic for it to kind of find people who can create those keyword lists for you, who can actually create the ads for you and everything else too as well. So that's going to wrap up today's show. I don't see any tweets that came in, so we should be good to go. Next week, I'm really not sure what we're going to talk about. I want to get to Facebook and start talking about more about social marketing for small businesses. And I've covered this before on our should your small business be doing social media. So I talked about it before on it? And the answer is yes and no. I mean, that's the honest answer. And there's a lot you can do within Facebook and how to set up an your ad groups there, and your ad campaigns, and how to optimize and stuff like that. But I still do want to talk more about Google Analytics, Google Tracking, Google Tags, and just talk about some tips and tricks for doing conversions for small businesses, because I realize that for many people out there, it's a challenge of, okay, well, what is a conversion, and how do I count a conversion, and what value do I assign a conversion? So I might talk a little bit about that here before I jump into Facebook. We'll just kind of wait and see. But that is going to be it, I believe, for today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. So again, the show notes page is going to be MarketingPlayBook.co /episode 12 is going to be for this week's episode. Otherwise, hey, feel free and join us on our Connect page. That's going to be MarketingPlayBook.co /connect. You can connect with us there and kind of go over our Facebook channel, our Facebook page, our private Facebook group, and everything there. So that's going to be it for today. I hope you got something out of it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section. Take care.